The most dangerous man in the world should be introduced. He has never, in his entire life, harmed a living creature. He has dissected a few, but only after they were dead. Author's note, because he was an early form of free-thinking scientist and did not believe that human beings had been created by some sort of divine being. Dissecting people when they were still alive tended to be a priestly preoccupation. They thought mankind had been created by some sort of divine being and wanted to have a closer look at his handiwork. End author's note. And had marveled at how well that had been put together, considering it had been done by unskilled labor. For several years, he hadn't moved outside a large, airy room, but this was okay because he spent most of his time inside his own head in any case. There's a certain type of person it's very hard to imprison. He had, however, surmised that an hour's exercise every day was essential for a healthy appetite and proper bowel movements, and was currently sitting on a machine of his own invention. It consisted of a saddle above a pair of treadles, which turned, by means of a chain, a large wooden wheel, currently held off the ground on a metal stand. Another freewheeling wooden wheel was positioned in front of the saddle and could be turned by means of a tiller arrangement. He'd fitted the extra wheel and tiller so that he could wheel the entire thing over to the wall when he'd finished taking his exercise, and besides, it gave the whole thing a pleasing symmetry. He called it the turning the wheel with pedals and another wheel machine. Elsewhere, Lord Vetinari was also at work. Normally he was in the oblong office, or seated in his plain wooden chair at the foot of the steps in the palace of Ankh-Morpork. There was an ornate throne at the top of the steps, covered with dust. It was the throne of Ankh-Morpork, and was indeed made of gold. He'd never dream of sitting on it. But it was a nice day, so he was working in the garden. Visitors to Ankh-Morpork were often surprised to find that there were some interesting gardens attached to the patrician's palace. The patrician was not a garden's kind of person, but some of his predecessors had been, and Lord Vetinari never changed or destroyed anything if there was no logical reason to do so. He maintained the little zoo and the racehorse stable, and even recognized that the gardens themselves were of extreme historic interest because this was so obviously the case. They had been laid out by Bloody Stupid Johnson. Many great landscape gardeners have gone down in history and been remembered in a very solid way by the magnificent parks and gardens that they designed with almost godlike power and foresight, thinking nothing of making lakes and shifting hills and planting woodlands to enable future generations to appreciate the sublime beauty of wild nature transformed by man. They have been Capability Brown, Sagacity Smith, Intuition de Vere Slade Gore. In Ankh-Morpork, there was Bloody Stupid Johnson. Bloody Stupid, it might look a bit messy now, but just you come back in 500 years' time, Johnson. Bloody Stupid, look, the plans were the right way round when I drew them, Johnson. Bloody Stupid Johnson, who had 2,000 tons of earth built into an artificial hillock in front of Core Manor because it'd drive me mad to have to look at a bunch of trees and mountains all day long. How about you? The Ankh-Morpork Palace grounds were considered the high spot, if such it could be called, of his career. For example, they contained the ornamental trout lake, 150 yards long, and because of one of those trifling errors of notation that were such a distinctive feature of Bloody Stupid's designs, 1 inch wide. It was the home of one trout, which was quite comfortable, provided it didn't try to turn around, and at once featured an ornate fountain which, when first switched on, did nothing but groan ominously for 5 minutes, and then fire a small stone cherub 1,000 feet into the air. It contained the ho-ho, which was like a ha-ha, only deeper. A ha-ha is a concealed ditch and wall designed to allow landowners to look out across rolling vistas without getting cattle and inconvenient poor people wandering across the lawns. Under Bloody Stupid's errant pencil, it was dug 50 feet deep and had claimed 3 gardeners already. The maze was so small that people got lost looking for it. But the patrician rather liked the gardens, in a quiet kind of way. He had certain views about the mentality of most of mankind, and the gardens made him feel fully justified. Piles of paper were stacked on the lawn around the chair. Clerks renewed them or took them away periodically. They were different clerks. All sorts and types of information flowed into the palace, but there was only one place where it all came together, very much like strands of gossamer coming together in the center of a web. A great many rulers, good and bad and quite often dead, know what happened. A rare few actually manage, by dint of much effort, to know what's happening. Lord Vetinari considered both types to lack ambition. "Yes, Dr. Cruces," he said, without looking up. "How the hell does he do it?" Cruces wondered. "I know I didn't make any noise."
Havelock,"
he began.
"You have something to tell me, Doctor? It's been mislaid."
"Yes, and no doubt you are anxiously seeking it. Very well, good day." The patrician hadn't moved his head the whole time. He hadn't even bothered to ask what it was. He bloody well knows, thought Cruces. How is it you can never tell him anything he doesn't know? Lord Vetinari put down a piece of paper on one of the piles, and picked up another. "You're still here, Dr. Cruces."
"I can assure you, my lord, that—"
I'm sure you can. There is one question that intrigues me, however."
"My lord?"
"Why was it in your guild house to be stolen? I had been given to understand it had been destroyed. I'm quite sure I gave orders." This was the question the assassin had been hoping would not be asked, but the patrician was good at that game.
My predecessor thought it would serve as a warning and an example."
The patrician looked up and smiled brightly.
"Capital,"
he said. "I've always had a great belief in the effectiveness of examples, so I am sure you'll be able to sort this out with minimum inconvenience all around."
"Certainly, my lord," said the assassin glumly, "but—"
Noon began. Noon in Ankh-Morpork took some time, since 12 o'clock was established by consensus. Generally, the first bell to start was that one in the Teachers' Guild, in response to the universal prayers of its members. Then, the water clock on the Temple of Small Gods would trigger the big bronze gong. The black bell in the Temple of Fate struck once, unexpectedly, but by then the silver pedal-driven carillon in the Fool's Guild would be tinkling. The gongs, bells, and chimes of all the guilds and temples would be in full swing, and it was impossible to tell them apart, except for the tongueless and magical oct-iron bell of Old Tom in the unseen university clock tower, whose 12 measured silences temporarily overruled the din. And finally, several strokes behind all the others, was the bell of the Assassin's Guild, which was always last. Beside the patrician, the ornamental sundial chimed twice and fell over. "You were saying?" said the patrician mildly.
"Captain Vimes," said Dr. Cruces. "He's taking an interest."
"Oh, dear me. But it is his job."
"Really? I must demand that you call him off."
The words echoed around the garden. Several pigeons flew away. "Demand," said the patrician sweetly.
Dr. Cruces backed and filled desperately. "He is a servant, after all," he said. "I see no reason why he should be allowed to involve himself in affairs that don't concern him."
"I rather believe he thinks he's a servant of the law," said the patrician.
"He's a jack in the office and an insolent upstart."
"Dear me, I did not appreciate your strength of feeling, but since you demand it, I will bring him to heel without delay.
Thank you.
Don't mention it. Do not let me keep you. Dr. Cruces wandered off in the direction of the patrician's idle gesture. Lord Vetinari bent over his paperwork again, and did not even look up when there was a distant muffled cry. Instead, he reached down and rang a small silver bell. A clerk hurried up. "Go and fetch the ladder, will you, Drumknot?" he said. "Dr. Cruces seems to have fallen in the ho-ho." Elsewhere, the back door to the dwarf Bjorn Hammerhawk's workshop lifted off the latch and creaked open. He went to see if there was anyone there, and shivered. He shut the door.
"Bit of a chilly breeze," he said to the room's other occupant. "Still, we could do with it."
The ceiling of the workshop was only about 5 feet above the floor. That was more than tall enough for a dwarf.
"Ow,"
said a voice that no one heard. Hammerhawk looked at the thing clamped in the vise, and picked up a screwdriver.
"Ow." "Amazing," he said. "I think that moving this tube down the barrel forces the 6 chambers to slide along, presenting a new one to the firing hole. That seems clear enough. The triggering mechanism is really just a tinderbox device. The spring here has rusted through. I can easily replace that. You know," he said, looking up, "this is a very interesting device, with the chemicals in the tubes and all. Such a simple idea. Is it a clown thing? Some kind of automatic slapstick?"
He sorted through a bin of metal offcuts to find a piece of steel, and then selected a file.
"I'd like to make a few sketches afterwards," he said.
About 30 seconds later, there was a pop and a cloud of smoke. Bjorn Hammerhawk picked himself up, shaking his head.
"That was lucky," he said. "Could have been a nasty accident there."
He tried to fan some of the smoke away, and then reached for the file again. His hand went right through it. Ahem. Bjorn tried again. The file was insubstantial as the smoke.
"What?"
Ahem. The owner of the strange device was staring in horror at something on the floor. Bjorn followed his gaze.
"Oh,"
he said. Realization, which had been hovering on the edge of Bjorn's consciousness, finally dawned. That was the thing about death. When it happened to you, you were among the first to know. His visitor grabbed the device from the bench and rammed it into a cloth bag. Then he looked around wildly, picked up the corpse of Mr. Hammerhawk, and dragged it through the door towards the river. There was a distant splash, or as close to a splash as you could get from the Yank.
"Oh dear," said Bjorn. "And I can't swim either."
"That, of course, will not be a problem," said Death. Bjorn looked at him.
"You're a lot shorter than I thought you'd be," he said.
"This is because I'm kneeling down, Mr. Hammerhawk."
"That damned thing killed me."
"Yes."
"That's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me."
"To anyone, but not, I suspect, the last time." Death stood up. There was a clicking of knee joints. He no longer cracked his skull on the ceiling. There wasn't a ceiling anymore. The room had gently faded away. There were such things as dwarf gods. Dwarfs were not a naturally religious species, but in a world where pit props could suddenly crack without warning and pockets of fire damp could suddenly explode, they'd seen the need for gods as the sort of supernatural equivalent of a hard hat. Besides, when you hit your thumb with an 8-pound hammer, it's nice to be able to blaspheme. It takes a very special and strong-minded kind of atheist to jump up and down with their hand clasped under their other armpit and shout, "Oh, random fluctuations in the space-time continuum," or "Arg, primitive and outmoded concept on a crutch." Bjorn didn't waste time asking questions. A lot of things become a shade urgent when you're dead.
"I believe in reincarnation," he said.
"I know.
I tried to live a good life. Does that help?"
"That is not up to me." Death coughed. "Of course, since you believe in reincarnation, you'll be Bjorn again." He waited.
"Yes, that's right,"
said Bjorn. Dwarfs are known for their sense of humor, in a way. People point them out and say, "Those little devils haven't got a sense of humor." Was there anything amusing in the statement I just made?
No, I don't think so.
It was a pun, or play on words. Bjorn again.
Yes?
Did you notice it?
I can't say I did.
Oh.
Sorry.
I've been told I should try to make the occasion a little more enjoyable.
Bjorn again.
Yes.
I'll think about it.
Thank you.